Well, welcome everybody. This is Tim McDonald coming to you with another episode of Advocacy at Work. And today I am so honored to be joined by Carole Motycka. I just said this 2 minutes ago. Motycka. I'm like, I'm getting it wrong, but I'm like, I always butcher it. But
that's the best way to start a podcast. Or
I know, and I like keeping it real too. So
keep it real. I love you, Tim. Motycka.
Motycka. I said it like 5 times before we started hitting record, but this is the way my mind works now. It's like I overthink it and then I butcher it. So, but Caroline, how are you doing? And please just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your story to get going. And I promise I won't screw up anymore.
Hey, that is totally okay. We give grace for that. I am doing great. It's so wonderful to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to jump in and, give some insight on all things colorectal cancer and all things advocacy. Excited to be here. Like you mentioned, I'm Carole Motycka. And I'm a survivor. I'm a 10-year colorectal cancer survivor. And I am one of your buddies in the liver transplant world. I was one of the first people that transplanted after metastatic colorectal cancer diagnosis back in 2018. It seems like 10 centuries ago. But yeah, so I'm a liver transplant survivor and a colorectal cancer survivor. I was diagnosed in 2016 with metastatic disease. I was told I didn't have a very great opportunity at survival. And I dove in to my care, did a lot of different treatments. I was a part of a clinical trial. And then I moved into translational research and transplant and was able to extend my survival from 6 months all the way now to 10 years plus. So I now work for Fight Colorectal Cancer. I'm the community engagement manager there. And just excited to be a part of this with you.
No, I am so thrilled that you're here. And I can't wait to dive into this a little bit more and go back to some of those moments. But before we do, I always like asking this question because it kind of sets an understanding with the listeners. How do you define advocacy?
That's a big question. I think advocacy starts with your personal self, so you start advocating by learning how to use your voice in your own healthcare. I mean, not just healthcare, but across the board and in your life, you learn how to use your voice and advocate for yourself, advocate for, better opportunities, better experiences, and to create change. And I think then, I guess advocacy transitions. And I think you discover that advocacy continues by learning how to tell your story and learning how to take your experience, I think, and create change for everyone, and make things better across, systems change, policy change, healthcare treatment change. And so I think advocacy happens when we kind of do both of those things, and it sure can be powerful.
Oh, yes, it can. So thank you for sharing that. I still have not had 2 people say the same answer to that question. So I love that's why I love that question. But I'd like to go back a little bit because I always like to understand, when you were diagnosed with cancer, tell us a little bit about what your life was like then, how you felt when you got that diagnosis. And let's just start with that.
I have to tell you, Tim, my life was pretty great. Like I didn't have any, I was a mom. I was a suburban mom living the dream. I had 4 kids and they were going off to college and starting to, I guess, butterfly into, cool kids and, doing their own thing. And I was transitioning from like the mom role to like kind of the sidecar and like letting them drive and getting to do like more of my own things. And like, the world was starting to change for me and we started to do more outdoor things. I was an active runner and in the best shape of my life. And we were hiking on a trail. And unfortunately, I fell and thought I had a sore shoulder and ended up in the emergency room. And from my shoulder pain became a diagnosis of cancer. And so my world that was seemingly normal, gosh, turned upside down in a hot second. And it really spiraled into, honestly, panic in some senses, grief, pain. There were so many sad things that I experienced right away that I really had to like kind of put aside, even because along with all of those things was the trauma of going into immediate care and not even understanding any kind of the systems or how it worked, and kind of being thrust right into, oh my gosh, I don't even know what these words are. And so like I felt all of these heavy weights just lying on me, and it was a really scary time in my life.
I just really want to take a pause and say, I remember that feeling when I got it. And anybody, if you're listening to this, you know, you hear people like Caroline, myself, others in the world talk like we know all these terms. We were in the same boat as you when we first got diagnosed, and you just heard Caroline explain that. It was like, you just don't know. And I think that, like, I don't know. I think you said it. It's like you had all these emotions, right? And there wasn't one. It was just like all of them. And I'm guessing if you're like me and like probably most others, all those emotions weren't just like you didn't move from one to one. They were all there at one time, right?
Absolutely. It's the truth. You know, they say that it's like a floodgate, and the gates open, and you just flooded with all these feelings. And even the person that knows how to compartmentalize and organize, there's just so many things that you feel that you just don't know what to do. And you feel so helpless. I didn't know what oncology meant. You know, I've considered myself a fairly educated human being, and I didn't know the words that they were throwing at me. So aside from the feelings of helplessness, I was also crippled with, how do I figure out what my steps are, because I don't know any of this.
So how did you figure it out?
Well, a lot of trial and error, a lot of asking questions, I know this is going to sound cheesy because I just spoke of advocacy, but I think learning with like one of those little pocket books, you know, of guides, how to advocate for myself, a lot of Googling, and then a lot of like homework. And I know that sounds awful. I don't want anybody, you can feel bogged down, but like, I think at first I didn't have any other resources other than my oncologist, and like digging into Google and asking questions. I will tell you though, that as time went by, and as that 6-month sentence, I call it a sentence all the time because they told me I had 6 months to live. And as that time progressed, I realized that I needed help doing this. I couldn't do it all alone. And no one in my world understood what oncology or cancer looked like or meant. And no one that was my age or that was like me had cancer, and I didn't have anyone to relate to. And so along with Googling all the words and all the medical things, I started Googling community, and I found Colon Talks, which was a part of the old organization, Colon Club. And I delve into all the chats that were there, and I learned so much from community. And I think that really uplifted me and empowered me. And that took a lot of work. That's not over. I want to also abridge that by saying that wasn't over like a 2-week period. That was over, you know, I would say years of learning about community, and then leaning into what my community looked like and meeting people that were like me.
Yeah, no, I think that, you know, and I know you work in community now professionally. I do that as a living myself. And it's like, I think I've been in it for 2 decades. My total perception of it changed when I became a cancer patient. Because now I wasn't running a community. I was a member who needed community. And I think that's such a change. And so as you found that, like, how did, like, I know you said how you defined advocacy earlier. I'm guessing you weren't calling this advocacy as you were going through this early stages of this.
Heck no. I was calling it triage. I was calling it survival mode. I was calling it acute care. I mean, I was calling it all the things but advocacy, 100%. Yeah. It was like treading water, trying to figure out how this was going to look. And I'm a type A person, so I wanted to be like 10 steps ahead. And I quickly realized that that wasn't the case, that it was a day by day process. And I needed community because my brain didn't work that way. My brain wanted to be way ahead of the game. And I needed the community to tell me that it was okay to like be present and it was okay to look things up and learn about things. But I needed that balance, that medical side that I was digging into so much. I was trying to get myself so far ahead and have plans. And I really needed that balance of the community to help me understand that it could also pivot and things were okay. And I needed to hear those stories of hope and that people were, surviving and thriving. And I was learning about experiences and I needed both of those things.
Yeah. And I can't wait to fast forward ahead, but I really want to understand, those early days, you're in treatment, chemotherapy, I'm imagining, at this point, you're finding about these organizations and Colon Club and finding that the community that you needed and finding them to be the best resource for you and helping you understand this as other people are going through it. Kind of explain like what kind of led you up to getting into that liver transplant? How did you learn about it? Because I know you were one of the first people in North America to get a liver transplant as a colorectal cancer patient. So it's not like you could just Google that and say, oh, this is the treatment I want,
This is what I want. This is what I'm going to get. Now, I'll tell you a funny story. When I first went to the Cleveland Clinic, which is where I treated and received my care, ironically enough, no one that had looked at my scans wanted to do anything surgically. They really wanted me to do chemo for life. There wasn't a lot of surgical approaches that we could take. And my liver was just too covered. I had a very large tumor in the ball of my hepatic arc. They called it a ball in a tree. And it just was inoperable. And I went to Cleveland and my sister, she's a nurse practitioner, she went with me. And we jokingly, we were in the office and we were, really trying to find hope in a hopeless space that we were feeling. And we were joking that like, if all these things, Cleveland gave us hope that maybe they could do a surgical approach. And that was our first glimmer of maybe there is an opportunity outside of just chemo. And my sister jokingly said, well, if all this doesn't work, we'll just give her a liver transplant, right? And we laugh because that was 3 years before it even happened. And that wasn't even a consideration. And we just kind of put it in the universe. And so I always tell my sister, thank heaven she spoke those words to the universe, because I'll tell you, it wasn't that easy to get there. And we really didn't have any idea. It was just an opportunity. I had went through 12 rounds of chemo. I had a HAI pump inserted through a clinical trial with 15 people. At that point, it was a dosage trial for FUDR and ended up overdosing my liver, which caused acute liver failure. And I tell you, a lot of that time in my life is very gray. And I don't remember a lot of the nuances and the little things that happened along the way to get to transplant. But I remember two things specifically. The first thing is I remember my physician, my surgeon, coming in, and I had a liver aneurysm in the Cleveland Clinic parking lot, ironically enough. And he came in and he sat on my bed and he said, Caroline, I've always had something in my back pocket as an attempt to save you. And he said, I'm out of things in my pocket. He said, I can't give you chemo for your liver. I can't save you at this point. But he said, I have an opportunity. that is, he went through, and I didn't understand any of it. I didn't understand that it was translational research. I didn't understand that it came from Norway. I didn't understand any of the things. The thing I did understand was my physician said that I had a chance at life. I have 4 boys, and I said immediately, I'm in. It didn't matter to me what it meant, what the details were. I knew that I wasn't going to let my kids think I ever gave up on them. And so no matter what, I was going to try it. And so that day on that bed in that hospital room was the day that changed my life. And I had no idea what was going to happen. But I knew that I was all in at a chance to live. And so, here I am, and it all worked out. We hit a home run.
Well, I know that, you being one of the first ones to get this, I got mine 3 years ago. So, but even when I got mine, there was only about 14 centers in North America still doing it. Now there's like 75 to 80, I think, doing them. And when we were getting it, there was almost exclusively like you had to find your own donor, a living donor. It was no list to get on. I mean, we did technically get on a list, but it wasn't like, that was just for backup.
That wasn't going to happen.
Wrong. It wasn't to get an actual deceased donor. Now the technology's changed. I just want to make this, say this for other people. Now the technology's changed. There's a lot more programs. About half of the places doing transplants for colorectal cancer patients do deceased donors. So there is a much better chance of you getting a deceased donor and not going through the liver transplant process. But the reason why I want to talk about this, just ask you a question about it, is because I know you said you were a type A personality. Going through the liver transplant process and finding your own donor, explain what that felt like.
It's funny you mentioned that, because the first thing I said was, what do I have to do? Right. And they said, find a donor and find a liver. And I was like, wait a minute, here I am dying, and now I have to find a liver too. I mean, this is a lot of work for me. Community. Again, I'm pushing back to community. I was very fortunate. I worked at a church in Ohio where I raised my children, and I was the youth director at my church. So I did all the youth ministry pieces, and the people in my congregation, they knew of my plight. They knew what was happening to me, and it's really true. And if you Google the story, it's exactly how it happened. My pastor said, well, let's put a note in the bulletin and ask people for a liver. And, it's funny, because I said to him, I don't think that's the thing that you do with the bulletin. And he said, no, it's fine. It's fine. And I'm very fortunate. My community really rallied. My community embraced me, and my donor was actually a member of my church community. And he knew the minute he saw that in the bulletin, he knew that he was the person, along with 50 other people, knew they were the person that was going to be my donor. So I found my donor through my community.
So it was pretty quick that it happened for you.
It was. I was very fortunate. Jason kind of laughs now, and he says, he was the 6th person that they looked at and evaluated, and he was frustrated because he was like, I know I'm the person. And it was a lengthy process to get to him. They had to, but we didn't get the say in who we chose. Like, it was just him, giving his name, and he was right. He was the perfect match.
And the reason why I brought up the type A personality is being in control of everything and planning everything out. I know when you go through the donor process with the HIPAA restrictions that we have here in the US, I guess that must have been a little frustrating for you, trying to want control over that process, but really not even knowing any of the facts or information of what was happening.
I can't tell you how hard that was. On top of all the trauma that my family and were going through, we had to really just lean into trust and lean into hope and lean into just knowing that this was going to be okay no matter what happened, that we were trying our best. And I say that without, I say that really, I guess, I kind of sort of flippantly. I don't want people to think that wasn't a hard job, because that is extremely hard work to really get your when you're, especially when you're type A, to get your brain wrapped around, okay, I've got to let this, like, I got to give this to someone else, right? And trust that they're going to make the best decisions for me. And I had to advocate for myself in that space and say, okay, you know, Caroline can do this much. I can control these things, and everything else I'm going to have to allow other people to trust and count on their knowledge. And that's extremely hard, and it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. And I know, I just kind of want to get into like where your advocacy took off and how it got to where it is today now, because I know you have so much to cover, and I know we don't have a lot of time left, but just kind of give us a high level view of, you get your transplant, you recover from that. I know you said you've already found some of these, the colon club community. How did your kind of advocacy evolve to where you ended up at Fight Colorectal Cancer today?
Sure. That's a great question. So I tell you, I was in acute care for a year. And when I came out of that acute care and realized that life was going to be different forever, I couldn't change the fact. And I was feeling a lot of pressure that I didn't know how to do life. And I wanted to help. And I didn't know how to do that. And I had met the colon club through the chats, through the colon talks. And I saw a sign one day at the Cleveland Clinic, and it said, every patient, every single time. And I didn't know that I was an exception to the rule. I didn't know that everyone didn't qualify for a transplant. Like, I have to say I was that naive in thinking that was the route for everybody. And that everybody received seemingly that same care. And I discovered through learning about people's stories and about meeting community, in the chats and in different spaces, in social media, I realized that wasn't the case. And I really wanted to do something more. I didn't know what that was, but I discovered in Colon Club, the Fight CRC, Colon Congress. And that was something that I thought I could go to and learn and meet people like me. And I engaged with them. I went to Colon Congress, and, it just became this really beautiful thing that I just dove into. I just believe that what you do is so important to help others, and what we can be a small voice, but together we can be such a bigger voice. And, policy affects systems, and systems affect people. And I believed that I could do more by getting involved at a bigger level, and I could help somebody. And for me, advocacy is helping change the trajectory for someone else because of what you experienced. And for me, it was, even if it was that sliver of a little bit, that was worth it. All I'd been through was worth it if I could make a difference and make change for someone else. And so I dove right in, and boy, I've just never been so proud to be able to honor my story and honor others that don't have as much of a voice as I do, by sitting at the table with people that are listening, and by doing things for people and carrying them with me and carrying their stories alongside of mine to affect change. And it just gives me full gratitude for my life.
It's so amazing. And I got to tell you, I really feel the same way. It's like, this is almost like healing for me, doing advocacy work. And I know we were talking about survivorship before we started recording, and just the mental toll as well as the physical side effects that are lingering from the chemo that we were on, just how healing I think advocacy is. And I just wish I can express that to more people, that, like, yes, it's not easy, but it does really help, I think, ourselves move through this survivorship, Yeah.
I think what we talked about earlier is so important. Advocacy and being a part of opportunities to share your story and to promote wellness for other people has this really healing ability on my own story. It's softened the load for me. It's made me feel like I've been able to contribute and to others and meet others. And, I'm going on 10 years of survivorship, and in a world that is changing and ever evolving. People are becoming long-term survivors. And so we have to continue to drive work. As you mentioned, I have neuropathy in my hands that I didn't have 8 years ago. And so like being able to be a part of community and relationships has such a healing and comforting, has helped my, it's really helped all of those pieces. Just being able to talk to people that understand, or, ornately. You don't have to, we can talk about butts, we can talk about our feelings. The people in my blue family, which are now, many of them are my chosen family, are understand what I've experienced at a whole different level than anybody else will ever. And I don't want anybody else to, but I'm so grateful that they have helped heal me, and continue to help heal me.
Yeah. Now I know you did a lot of advocacy work just on your own. And then you made the transition a few years back to actually working for Fight Colorectal Cancer. And I know we just were together at a conference about a month ago, and you told me something, but I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about what the differences are between being an advocate on your own and now being an advocate working for an advocacy organization.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, we mentioned earlier, advocacy is self, right? So it's telling your story, it's using your voice to, affect change for yourself, and making sure that you receive the right care in the right amount of time, and the right processes are in place, and asking questions. And that not just as care, that's also, all of the different pieces of your life. So not just your healthcare, but really just advocating for humanity, right? For you as a human being. I think that transitioning to advocacy for an organization looks a lot different. You're still telling your story, and you're still advocating for yourself, and you're advocating for others. But the really cool shift when you get involved in advocacy in an organization is it really broadens the perspective of, you get to dive, we have the ability to dive into a bigger space of prevention care and advocating for, not just people who are facing disease or have been diagnosed with disease, but we really get to unpack in a bigger space all the way back. We back it up, and we look at what do we need to do to protect people from even getting cancer in the first place. And so I think the advocacy door just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then all the way through, again, to survivorship. That's the biggest change for me, is that door is opened, and not just like telling story and sharing story, but actually taking those stories and putting them in places to connect all of those things together, all the way from the very beginning of prevention care all the way through to, to survivorship. So I get to take people's stories and put a face to data, put a face to diagnostics, put a face to preventative care, put a face to survivorship. And so I get to take stories that I hear and like really put humanity on them, because listen, data matters and science matters and research matters, but without humanity, without people, none of it matters. And, I think I've told you this 1,000 times, that if we don't have people, none of the work that we do matters. And so it just fills my cup so full that I get to meet people in my, in my work, and put those faces on stories to really be impactful. And for me, that's what being part of an advocacy organization is different from like telling my own story. You froze, Tim. I can't hear you. There, you're back. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Oh, I
Can you
just
hear me?
texted you. I'm sorry. Did that all get cut
No,
off? It was
I
so
think that
good.
was my computer. I think that was my computer doing that. So, I don't know if you even heard me because I did get the last part of what you were saying. And
Okay, no, I didn't. I hope that was
I think,
okay. Shoot.
no, no, it was perfect. So I will cut. I will edit that. But
Sorry.
um, so my question was, I know when we talked a little bit when we were in Tampa, you were explaining some of the differences and uniquenesses between being your own advocate and working for an advocacy organization, some of the things that it limits that you need to be concerned with, but also like how your lens of looking at things is. And I know you explained some of the opportunities that come, but maybe you can kind of touch on that really briefly. And I love the phrase that you use. It's like kind of the difference between it being a member of a church and running the church.
It's so true, right? Like I'm lucky enough to be both of those things, right? I'm a member, but then I also work for the church. And so, yeah, I mean, you play a different role. You definitely learn that we are better together and that our voices can be assimilated so well together. And so it's less about it becomes this shift in that, we continue to you continue to tell your story. But also you shift into really engaging in together and like learning to connect people through shared stories, through shared experiences. And boy, I love meeting new people. I love learning about stories because then I can figure out how to connect them just like I was connected. So it's like a whole what's that, a circle of life, if you will. I started out feeling helpless and feeling hopeless, and then now with my work I get to not tell my story as much, but I still have my story there, but I get to hear people's stories now who are sitting in the place where I was back 10 years ago, and I get to learn how to connect them and figure out where they need to have support, and I get to lean in on our community and being together. So that's kind of the mind shift I think of working, being a part of the church and working for the church is, boy, it is so much togetherness. And it really has been a full circle for me in that I really am so proud that now I get to give hope in a place where I felt hope and know that it makes a difference.
I love it. Let's take a break from these questions and have some
Oh
fun
boy.
questions now.
Oh.
These are just four, like they're pretty simple, but what is your favorite color?
My favorite color is red. I'm a Buckeye. Go Buckeyes. Red, it'll never change.
And what is your favorite band or musician?
Oh, there's so many. I'm like a little jukebox. My favorite band, probably like it's on like the fence. Like I'm a big Gaga fan. I went to Gaga in concert with Tony Bennett, and I love, I love big band, but also Coldplay. But I love all like genres. But Coldplay, Lady Gaga, I'm kind of in there somewhere.
All right. And then what is a place you've always wanted to visit but never have?
Oh my gosh, I am desperate to go to Fiji, Bali, like all the beach places. I actually just recently have bought a house in Florida, so I'm back and forth between the Northeast and Florida. And there are so many beaches. I have a full-on list of the places that I want to go see, and then I'm going to continue my journeys, hopefully someday soon across the great ocean.
It's funny because my wife and I have always wanted to go to Thailand, and
Yes.
our friends went to Bali, and we were like thinking of that. And our daughter has been over
Oh,
there, and she lives here in the Tampa area too. And she goes, Mom, why do you want to travel halfway around the world to go to a beach if that's all you're going to do is sit on the beach? You
I
got
don't
beautiful
care.
beaches right here. um, and the final question is,
Okay.
what is one thing that most people do not know about you?
Oh gosh, there's so many. One thing that people don't know about me is, oh, well, here's a trivia thing, sort of one thing people don't know about me. I can say all the presidents of the United States in order.
Wow. Impressive.
You can DM me later, and if you really want to know them, and I'll put it on my Facebook or something. It's true. I learned them in 3rd grade, and I can still say them. Even through chemo, I still have them.
Oh, I'm amazed. It's funny though, I can recall more things that I knew before, but like my wife can ask me to go up and get something, and I'll come upstairs and come back down and I don't get it because I forgot and did something else while I was up here and forgot about it. So now I just have one final question for you, and this is getting back more into our advocacy work. But if money, time, and institutional gatekeeping were all off the table, what would you build or change first?
In cancer care?
Well, in your advocacy work, yeah, anything that you want.
If money was off the table, if policy was off the table, I would build in prevention care, and all of the ICD codes and all of the funding and all of the stuff that comes with creating the preventative care. Because truly, if we can screen people for colorectal cancer, we can prevent the disease. And so if all money was off, everything was off the table, that's where I would go, because that's going to save lives, is by screening, by diagnosis, early detection, and getting those polyps out. So that's hands down preventative care.
I love it. And you are so right on that. So Caroline, thank you so much for being a guest on Advocacy at Work. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about what you are doing?
Sure. I'm on social media. So, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X a little bit. You can find me there. And then for work, you can find me at fightcrc.org. If you want to visit our website, we've got a great chat bot. And you can also email me at caroline@fightcrc.org. And that's my personal email. Happy to connect you to our community. And
I know you have just recently written a very nice article, I think, on fightcrc.org about, kind of your survivorship and advocacy. So definitely, if you get to that website, check Caroline's article out on their blog. It is really a good read. So thank you so much for joining us, Caroline. And thank you for tuning in this week on Advocacy at Work. And don't forget to subscribe when you visit advocacyatwork.com.